A man in a worn canvas jacket and dusty jeans walks into an estate sale in Pasadena, California on a Saturday morning, and a woman with a clipboard looks at him and makes a decision. Not a loud decision, not a cruel decision, a quiet one. The kind that is made in under 2 seconds and communicated through nothing more than a shift in posture. A fractional change in the attention given to the next person through the door, and the very specific way she does not come over to offer help. The man wanders through the rooms of the house. He touches things. He picks them up, holds them, sets them down. He does not appear to be in a hurry. He does not appear to be concerned about the woman with the clipboard, who has been watching him the way estate sale workers watch people they are not sure about, not following, not confronting, just maintaining the particular awareness of someone who has decided that this visitor may require management. He is in the house for 47 minutes. At the end of those 47 minutes, he stops in front of a roll-top desk in the back study, and he stands there for a while. He asks the price. The woman tells him. He takes out a checkbook. He signs the check. The woman looks at the name on the check. The room, which has not been watching, and now is, will be talking about what happens next for considerably longer than the estate sale lasts. There is a neighborhood in Pasadena, California, called Prospect Park. It sits at the eastern edge of the city, tucked against the foothills, in a part of Pasadena that the real estate listings describe as established, and the people who live there describe simply as old. The houses are large and set back from the street on lots that have been landscaped so long they have stopped looking landscaped and started looking like what the ground wanted to do all along. The trees are mature. The sidewalks are uneven where roots have come up through the concrete, which the city addresses periodically and impermanently. The neighborhood has the particular quality of a place that is not trying to be anything other than what it has been for a long time. The house at 411 Prospect Way had been in the Aldrich family for 61 years. Margaret Aldrich had moved into it with her husband in 1963, and her husband had died in 1997, and Margaret had stayed, which was not sentimentality but practicality. She knew the house knew her, and the garden was 34 years old, and she was not going to leave it to strangers. She had died in February, at 89, and the estate had gone to a niece in Portland who had visited twice in 20 years, and who had contracted with a company called Whitmore Estate Sales to manage the liquidation of everything the family did not want to claim. The Whitmore Company specialized in this kind of estate, homes that had been owned for decades and that contained the specific accumulation of a long life. The furniture acquired at different periods, each piece with its own history. The books, boxed by category. The ceramics and glassware and silver that had been used and then put away and then used again at intervals that spanned generations. The art on the walls, some of it significant and most of it personal, and the paper, always the paper, letters and invoices and photographs, and the particular documents that a person generates over 61 years of living in the same house and that their heirs must either read or discard. The sale ran 2 days. Saturday for the significant pieces, the furniture, the art, the jewelry from the cases in the master bedroom. Sunday for everything else, priced lower, taken by whoever arrived first. On Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, when the doors opened, 37 registered buyers came through. The Whitmore Company required registration for the Saturday sale because the Saturday sale contained, among other things, 3 pieces of early California plein air painting that the company's appraiser had valued collectively at $340,000, and that would require proof of funds before any offer was entertained. The man in the canvas jacket had not registered in advance. He came in behind a couple from San Marino who had registered and who were shown immediately to the living room where the paintings were displayed on easels. And he came in wearing the jacket, worn canvas, the color of dried grass, the kind of jacket that is sold outdoors and lives outdoors and accumulates the particular texture of a garment that has been places. He wore dark jeans with a tear at the left knee that was not styled, work boots that had worked, a watch on his left wrist that no one in the room was close enough to read. He took a Whitmore estate sales pamphlet from the table by the door. He walked into the house. The woman with the clipboard looked at him. Her name was Beverly Marsh, and she had worked estate sales for 19 years. Beverly Marsh was 57 years old. She had the precise, contained energy of someone who runs a room through attention rather than authority, who knows at any given moment where every buyer is and what they are looking at, and whether they need assistance or management or simply space. She kept her hair in a practical style that she had maintained for a decade. She wore sensible shoes, always, because estate sales required standing and moving for 8 consecutive hours, and the shoes were not decorative. She carried the clipboard the way a person carries a tool they have used for so long it has become an extension of the hand. She had started in estate sales at 38, after a career in retail management that had taken her from a junior buyer position at a department store in Glendale to a regional manager role that she had left when the company restructured and eliminated the regional layer entirely, which was a decision made in a conference room in Denver by people who had never been to any of the stores they were eliminating positions from. She had taken the estate sale work initially because it was available and she needed work. And she had discovered that she was good at it in the specific way she had been good at retail management. She read rooms, she read people, and she made decisions quickly. She had grown up in Azusa, a city 9 miles east of Pasadena, in a household that was not wealthy and that had a relationship to wealthy households of the kind that some households have. Adjacent, familiar with the signals, clear-eyed about the distance. Her mother had cleaned houses in San Marino and Arcadia and the older sections of Pasadena, and Beverly had sometimes gone along on school holidays when her mother could not find childcare, and she had sat in the kitchens of large houses and done her homework at tables that cost more than her family's car, and had developed, in that early and sustained exposure, a fluency in the grammar of significant possessions. She knew what things cost. She knew what things were worth, which was not always the same number. She knew, before she opened a cabinet or turned over a piece of ceramics, whether it was likely to be something or nothing. She also knew, and this was the thing that 19 years in estate sales had honed into a quick and reliable instrument, who was likely to buy and who was not. Not from cruelty, from pattern recognition. The buyers who came to the Saturday sale, the significant pieces sale, were a recognizable population: dealers, collectors, interior designers with a client's checklist, and the occasional private buyer who had done their research and come with a specific thing in mind and the means to acquire it. They dressed and moved and held things in certain ways that were consistent enough to constitute a type. The man in the canvas jacket did not fit the type. He was not, Beverly judged in 2 seconds, a dealer. Dealers had a quality of brisk professional attention that this man did not have. He was not an interior designer with a checklist. He might be a private buyer, but the jacket and the jeans and the work boots did not suggest the kind of private buyer the Saturday sale typically attracted. He was more likely, she thought, to be the kind of person who wandered into estate sales without understanding that this one had a particular registration requirement for serious offers, and who would touch things and leave. She did not follow him. She observed. He went through the house the way certain people go through houses, with genuine attention room by room, not rushing toward the obvious things. He spent 9 minutes in the kitchen, which had nothing of significance, but which contained, in the pantry shelves, a collection of ceramic canisters that Beverly had noticed and priced, and that had not been claimed yet. He handled 2 of them, turned them over, looked at the marks on the bottom, set them back. He knew what he was looking at. She revised her read slightly. He spent 11 minutes in the library, which was the room that required the most time of anyone who used it properly, because the books were the kind of books that a woman who had lived in a house for 61 years accumulates. Not a curated collection, but a real one, with the particular mix of serious reading and sentimental keeping and gifts from people who were gone that constitutes a life. He pulled 3 books from the shelf, read the front matter of one, looked at the inscriptions in the others, put them all back. Beverly, from the doorway, watched this. She revised her read again. He moved through the dining room, the silver, the china, the crystal, all tagged and priced, without touching anything. In the master bedroom, he looked at the jewelry cases with the focused attention of someone who knew what the cases contained and was deciding whether any of it was what he was looking for. He touched nothing. At 23 minutes, Beverly had moved from management to observation. At 35 minutes, from observation to curiosity. At 47 minutes, he stopped in the back study. The back study was the room Beverly Marsh loved most in the Aldrich house. Not because it was the most valuable. The living room, with the plein air paintings, was more valuable by a significant margin. But the back study was the room that told you the most about who Margaret Aldrich had been. The roll-top desk, which had been in the study since 1971 according to the purchase receipt Beverly had found in a file drawer. The bookshelves that held the working library rather than the display library, the reference books, the atlases, the dictionaries in several languages, the complete run of a natural history journal that Margaret had subscribed to for 42 years. The framed photographs on the wall, not art but record, a woman and a man in front of a house, young, the house recognizable as this one, but the trees much smaller. The same woman older, in a garden that was clearly this garden, but in a different season. A child Beverly had not been able to identify, laughing at something outside the frame. The roll-top desk was tagged at $4,200. It was worth more. Beverly had priced it conservatively because the wood had a small water stain on the left side that the appraiser had flagged, and she preferred to price conservatively and let the competition drive the number. It was a good piece. Federal period revival. Solid mahogany, with the original tambour slats and the original brass fittings. The interior was intact. The pigeonholes, the small drawers, the 2 larger compartments where Margaret had kept her correspondence, which Beverly had carefully removed and boxed and shipped to Portland before the sale. The man stood in front of the desk for a long time. He opened the roll-top. He ran his fingers across the tambour slats. He opened and closed the small drawers. He looked at the interior with the attention he had given the books, not assessing exactly, but something more like listening. Beverly came to stand in the doorway. He said, without turning, "What's the story on this one?" "Federal period revival," she said. "Probably 1910 to 1920. The hardware is original. There's a water stain on the left side, which is why it's priced where it is." He looked at the left side. "How bad?" "Cosmetic," she said. "Won't affect the function." He nodded slowly. "How long was it in the family?" "Since 1971, she said. We found the receipt." He put his hand flat on the surface of the desk. "Not testing. Something else. I'll take it," he said. Beverly said, "The price is $4,200. "I know," he said. "I read the tag." She said, "We require either a cashier's check or a wire transfer for pieces over 2,000, or a personal check with 2 forms of ID. He was already reaching into the inside pocket of the canvas jacket. He produced a checkbook. He said, "That's fine." He wrote the check at the desk itself, on the surface of the thing he was buying, which Beverly would think about later as the most natural and right way she had ever seen someone do it. He filled in the amount. He filled in the date. He signed it. He handed it to her. She looked at the name. She looked at it for a moment. Then, she looked at him. He was already looking at her with the expression of someone who has done this before and knows what the next 4 seconds look like and has decided to let them happen. She said, Beverly," he said. He had looked at her name tag at some point, without her noticing. "Do you want to see the ID?" She said, "I don't think that's going to be necessary." He almost smiled. "The desk," he said. "Was it hers? The woman who lived here?" Beverly said yes. "She used it for 61 years. He looked at the desk. He said, "Good." His name moved through the house in the specific way that names move through rooms when there are enough people in them, and the name is one that lands differently than other names. Beverly had not announced it. She had gone to find her colleague Marcus to process the sale, and she had told Marcus quietly. And Marcus had told someone, and within 11 minutes the information had distributed itself through the 37 registered buyers in the house at 4111 Prospect Way, with the efficiency of information that people feel compelled to pass along. The couple from San Marino, who had been standing in front of the plein air paintings for 40 minutes, and who had not yet made an offer because they were still deciding, came to stand at the door of the back study. They looked at the man. They looked at the desk. They went back to the paintings and made an offer within 6 minutes, which Beverly would later calculate was the fastest closing she had witnessed in 19 years of estate sales. A dealer named Frank Alderton, who had been in Beverly's professional orbit for 11 years, found her in the hallway and said, "Is that actually?" Beverly said, "Please don't make a thing of it." Frank said, "I'm not making a thing of it. I'm just Frank," Beverly said. He went back to the furniture. The man in the canvas jacket was still in the back study. Beverly went to find him. She stood in the doorway. He was sitting in the chair in the corner, an armchair, upholstered in green velvet that had worn through at the armrests, not for sale because the niece in Portland had claimed it. He was looking at the desk. Beverly said, "We can have it delivered anywhere in the Los Angeles area by Tuesday." "I know where I want it," he said. "I'll arrange the delivery." She said, "Of course." She stayed in the doorway a moment. She said, "I want to apologize." He looked at her. "When you came in," she said, "I made a decision about you before I knew anything about you. I want you to know I did that." He looked at her for a moment. "I've been walking into rooms for 30 years, he said. "I'm not surprised by it." "That doesn't make it right," she said. "No," he said, "it doesn't." She looked at the desk. She loved that desk, Beverly said. "Margaret Aldrich. I never met her, but you can tell from a house. The things that are worn in the right places." He said, "The tambour slats." She said, "Yes." "And the small drawers. The brass is smooth where her fingers touched it." He nodded. "It's going somewhere it'll be used," he said. "That's what it needs." Beverly said, "I think so." She left him there. The roll-top desk arrived at its new address the following Tuesday. The delivery crew noted, in the form they filed with the Whitmore Company, that the space prepared for it had clearly been arranged in advance, which they mentioned only because it was the kind of detail their form had a line for, and because it suggested that the purchase had not been impulsive. Beverly Marsh received a letter 6 weeks after the sale. It was handwritten, on plain stationery, and it thanked her for managing the sale well and for what she had said in the doorway of the back study. It mentioned the water stain on the left side of the desk, and said it had been treated by a conservator whose work Beverly might want to recommend to future buyers if the question came up. It said one other thing. It said, "You read rooms the way people who have learned to read rooms read them, from the inside, not the surface. That is harder to learn than it sounds. Most people never do." Beverly kept the letter in the Aldrich file, which she kept because she kept all her files, and because the Aldrich file was one she came back to. She thought about the sentence for a long time. She thought about the canvas jacket. She thought about how quickly she had decided. She thought about what 19 years had built in her and whether all of it was an asset. She was not sure it was. The not being sure was the beginning of something that took her longer to name than she would have preferred. Beverly Marsh changed one practice. The change was small enough that she was not sure anyone noticed it, and large enough that it changed how the Saturday sales felt to her, and, she believed, to the buyers who moved through them. She stopped forming a read before someone entered the room. Not permanently. She was a professional, and professional assessment was part of the job. But she stopped forming the read in the first 2 seconds, before the person had done anything other than arrive. She moved the read later, after the first conversation, after she had seen how someone handled an object, after she understood something about what they were looking for. She found, in the first 3 months of this practice, that she was wrong about people less often. Not right more often, less wrong. The categories she had built over 19 years were still accurate as categories, but they had more exceptions than she had allowed for, and the exceptions were more interesting than the rules. She told Marcus about it at the end of a Sunday sale in March, 6 months after the Aldrich estate. They were rolling the last of the tables and Beverly said, "I've been doing something differently." Marcus said, "I noticed." She said, "What did you notice?" He said, "You ask people what they're looking for before you decide if they can afford it." Beverly was quiet for a moment. "Is that what it looks like?" "That's what it looks like," he said. "It's good. People talk more. The ones who know what they want find it faster. The ones who don't know tell you things you'd never get otherwise." She said, "Like what?" He said, "Like the woman last month who came in for a lamp and left with the writing desk, because you asked her about the lamp and she told you about her daughter, and it turned out the desk was what the daughter needed." Beverly said, "I didn't put that together." "I did," Marcus said. "That's not something you would have found if you decided in the first 2 seconds." She looked at the empty room. "No," she said. "It isn't." The Aldrich estate sale had one coda that Beverly did not know about until 2 years later. The niece in Portland, whose name was Caroline, had kept one item from the house. A leather-bound journal that Margaret had kept for the last 11 years of her life, and that Caroline had read in the weeks after the sale. The journal was not for sale. It was not in any inventory. It was in Caroline's apartment, on a shelf above her desk. In the journal, in the entry dated 6 months before Margaret died, was a sentence that Caroline had underlined. "The things I have loved longest are the ones that still have work left in them." Caroline sent a photograph of that page to Beverly Marsh, because Beverly had sent her a photograph of the roll-top desk before the sale, and because it seemed like the right kind of thing to pass along. Beverly received the photograph on a Wednesday morning before a Thursday sale. She looked at it for a while. She printed it and put it in the Aldrich file. She went to the sale. I have been thinking about what Beverly Marsh saw when she looked at that check. Not the number, $4,200, which registers differently depending on what you thought the person writing it was going to do. Not the name, exactly, though the name was the event. The posture, The canvas jacket, the work boots, the 47 minutes of a man touching things the right way, reading inscriptions, listening to a desk, the way he sat in Margaret Aldrich's armchair afterward and looked at the thing he had just bought. Beverly Marsh had been reading rooms for 19 years. She had been right about most of what she read. And she had been wrong, in the first 2 seconds of the morning, about this one. Not catastrophically wrong. Not cruelly wrong, but wrong in the specific way that a practiced and well-intentioned person can be wrong when the pattern they have learned is accurate on average and does not account for the particular. What I find most worth sitting with is not the wrongness. It is what she did with it. She said it in the doorway, without being asked, to the person she had been wrong about. She did not explain herself. She did not offer context. She said, "I made a decision about you before I knew anything about you. I want you to know I did that." That is the hardest sentence to say. Not the apology that comes after an event is public. The acknowledgement made privately to the person it concerns when no one is making you say it. She said it. And then she changed the practice, not because someone told her to. Because 19 years had built something in her that was mostly an asset and partly not. And she was honest enough to see the difference. The desk is somewhere in Los Angeles, being used. The brass is being worn smooth in new places. The small drawers are opening and closing under a different hand. The things that have work left in them find their way. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for finding value in things that don't announce themselves, and for the particular way he moves through the world when nobody is watching. If something in this one stayed with you, drop a comment and tell me what you took from it. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. See you in the next one.